born. A man are rebuilding an abandoned French maison de maître while starting an entirely new life in the French countryside. But the deeper this fights back, collapsing walls, hidden dream that could either become everything they hoped for or a complete disaster. And Beeks take on the enormous challenge manor house, but also its attached buildings back to their bones and rebuilding them piece by piece. This is a real story about the wins, the mistakes, the pressure, the progress, and the transformation of a forgotten French property into a household home. As more of the structure is opened up, a large gap begins to form, and suddenly, that point, there is no turning back its transformation. With what used to be construction zone, after preparing the floor surface and tying in the mesh, the concrete work faster now. The mix is poured out, taking the shape of the space. It's bit by bit until everything feels even. Settle, and letting it dry into something Jack cuts into the existing concrete plumbing is meant to go. The idea is in, seal it all up, and then tie the two spaces together, but none of positions of the bath, basin, and toilet. Now everything moves to the inside. A channel is marked for the bath. The washing machine runs on its own line into a shared point. For a moment, it of the whole restoration so far, but the one that sits under the concrete. Then, edges. After that, the self-leveling the floor just has to sit and wait 3 weeks before it fully cures and everything has to come out. Nothing can be left behind or worked around later. Furniture already unstable and barely broken down and taken out to be thrown, keeping what won't fit into the new space. Jack and BX decide to open up simple job. The walls are built from this is slow, heavy work. At first, things seem to be going to the wall. Suddenly begins to break away, loosen. It turns into clear pretty quickly that the lintel needs to go in before. It feels good to at last have that part in place. In some areas, the underside to catch reflections perfectly, other and imperfections showing through. But none of that really matters right now. The important part is simple. The opening is sealed. The work is brutally loud, full of dust, echoes through the home, and the air into everything, clothes, skin, lungs. Nothing really escapes it. But the wall gives up, and the opening begins to through the space in a way it never, into a careful balancing act. Nothing is measuring, loosening, shifting, and to sit right. Jack holds each corner in enough to keep it standing, but still loose enough to move if needed, shaping the stone around the frames. He trims back every rock sticking out beyond the edge by hand. There's no stop screaming, and dust hangs in the everything feels muted behind it. Still, rough opening begins to change. Once the stone is at last cut back behind the frame, Jack feels every awl comes down to the finish. He spreads surface. It moves on steady and even cut. In the end, there's a clean square. Looking at the concrete floor now, it's hard not to feel like something went compound, didn't quite behave the way it into a smooth, even surface. It left sand. It comes with hesitation. The first, as if the floor itself might react. But everything begins to change. The door meant for it. On paper, the plan looks simple enough, but like most things in this home, it doesn't quite go. The floor height has changed, supposed to fit, sits awkwardly in the behaving the way it was expected to. Cutting the door frame, adjusting the shape of a handmade structure become the really give straight answers. only things that can be made to work. The arch isn't perfectly symmetrical either. Each side is slightly different. Life and everything it has already been part of the plan here. The water problem is still very much there. The tiles simply don't extend far, the gutters. Instead, rainwater is hitting the top of the wall, soaking into the stone every time it rains. Really move forward until this is. The space is at last starting to make sense. For a long time, there was just a toilet sitting almost in the middle of the home, with no real walls around it. The setup used a Makeover-style system isn't really possible. Now Jack starts. Looking at it now, it's hard to even divide a wall, separated from the rest of much more natural now, almost like more private bath space area. A long one, making use of an area that previously slowly, the whole space begins to feel at last having a clear purpose. Plumbing turns into the next challenge, and this is the first real connection, going tightened, checked, then tightened once there it is. A proper, watertight joint. Next comes the cold water feed connected into the distribution manifold. What line gets its own separate shutoff it matters. If something ever moves wrong, repaired without shutting the water off, are lined up, wrapped, and sealed before. The bath really deserves a full, smaller, and much simpler. The rust is away, and little by little, the bath running short that still counts as Jack adds insulation between the toilet area and the internal wall. The boards have to be separated by hand. The work with almost twice the weight of effort and getting each board into work. But once it's at last in place, door in the bath space, but nothing in the changes, everything from the start. The wall just doesn't want to meet. After a little trimming and grinding, it settles into place, and the door at last swings the way it should. The work slows down here, not because point where everything depends on precision. Moisture-resistant drywall insulation, cut to size, and fixed in really end anything. It just gets shaped, and finished, it all begins to. A new material comes into the build, micro-cement. Not plaster, not paint, but something in between structure and finish. It gets picked for its texture, that rawness that still feels intentional. The goal shifts here. It's no longer just about getting about character. Everything is ready now. Complete the space. What was rough and feel controlled and almost intentional. The stone sink changes the whole situation. It brings real weight into different kind of thinking. This isn't, and forgotten. So, the sink turns into the has, to carry the stone with complete confidence, while disappearing visually once everything is finished. That exact reason. Not to stand out, not to decorate the space, but simply to do its job without drawing attention to metal. Moisture finds its way into turns, into part of the build itself. It's something planned into the process from it's there beneath the sink. Since the ceiling is done, Jack starts operating on the exposed bath space walls, tile. In a space like this, bare surfaces to survive over time. Moisture, gradually. Mixture is applied across the walls. Layer by layer, the space begins losing, becoming an actual space someone could object from another reality. Large, with the irregular logic of the home revealing themselves. It widens slightly at one end. The doorway barely accommodates it. The walls are uneven. The space itself refuses symmetry at every stage. For a brief moment, it feels almost miraculous that it fits at all. The sink looks almost perfect. Actually, the stand sits at the right height. The spacing seems like it should work. Everything had been measured again, and times that failure was already a counted wall, and at last, it comes together. It trying to be part of the space, but meanwhile, the bath space gradually creates. Step by step, the edges are tightened, every small detail pushed a little closer until nothing feels accidental. Everything is seen. And just like that, space, but it no longer seems like work differently under the new light. Warmer agrees to something simple. Take the decades, wood that's been left so long, place itself. The idea lands almost at it into the bath space's interior, not as it turns into a long task. Not difficult in any dramatic sense, just stretched out over time. The kind of work that refuses to rush, no matter how much is through it. Only steady progress, each own. Some pieces give in easily, others time, just to become usable again. The timber, with all its years behind it, doesn't come in as a blank material. It imperfections that can't be replicated. They're left in place, because that starts feeling like it has always had this kind of presence in it. Attention. An anti-moisture mixture moves down first, then a coating over the top. Outside, the old wardrobe that has been gets its turn. Getting it inside is work with the ceiling, so Jack makes the legs. Only then does it at last. The idea of a bed base stops feeling like improvisation. It's about operating what can be shaped into something useful. Pallets end up fitting into that, capable of forming a base for it doesn't really go away. The garden begins to hold its own, whether seen from the windows or when leftover cement and stones pulled from an old fence get put back to use. Jack shapes them gradually into soft curves that shift the feeling of the whole space. The forms rise from the ground in gentle arcs, like oversized built-in pots sitting quietly in the middle of the garden. Arranged in a loose circle, they make it feel as if the space has simply organized itself around them. The garden is no longer just something seen from the windows. It has turned household and friends to make memories around the fire pit. The outdoor lounge feels grounded and built to stay, stones into the floor, giving it weight, texture, and a sense of history above. A solid wooden pergola stretches across the space. Soon enough, hanging, and in the end, it settles into outdoor oasis, just as Jack and Beaks had. With the bath space sliding door, at last, it should. It stops feeling open and defined, like a space that now knows is almost finished already. But it's the space that doesn't really offer options, aside for children, which narrows the thinking even more. A loft bed begins to feel like the only real answer. There, the height is there. And that changes. The kids have put up with so much through this restoration. Following along, there's a quiet moment in all of it, as this bed space is at last ready to be revealed to the oldest child. A space call his own, but it's still not quite done. Those last small decisions are still hanging there. The final fittings that need attention before the space can at last be called finished. In the end, it is not just a loft bed or a desk or a set of lights. It is the result of years of shifting, adapting, and holding things together until they could at last become something permanent. A space that was earned at last be called finished. After months of constant movement, the home has at last learned how to sit about it, came together cleanly. Nothing needed adjusting, reoperating, or trying. For Jack and Beaks, It's no longer just a something else entirely. A home that their presence, their routines, and the growing into it. That's what turns it into a story. Stories. And leave your ideas below. Challenge.